Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, I am honored to welcome remarkable guest, the team and authors from AlzAuthors in celebration of the 10th anniversary of AlzAuthors. Welcome everyone as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of AlzAuthors. We're excited to have several of the co-founders as well as members and authors from AlzAuthors joining us today to take part in this celebration. I want to take a moment and ask each of you just to quickly introduce yourselves. I'll start with Marianne Sciucco. Welcome, Marianne.
Hi, Lance. Thank you so much for having us all here. It's wonderful to see all my beautiful authors on this one screen together. I'm Marianne. I'm a co-founder of AlzAuthors and the author of Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story. I serve as president of the organization and board member, as well as manager, podcast producer, and co-host with my friend Christy.
Thank you, Marianne. Always good to see you, and a board member of All Home Care Matters as well.
That's right.
Next, we'll go to our friend Jean Lee. Welcome, Jean.
Hi, Lance. Thank you so much for having us today. I'm Jean Lee. I am the author of Alzheimer's Daughter. Both of my parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the same day. I read my way through that journey. I read to learn. I'm a teacher. And I appreciated anyone who would share a personal story with me about their journey. And that's how I connected with Marianne Sciucco and Vicki Tapia, because I read their books and their books helped guide me through my own journey. We co-founded AlzAuthors together in 2015. I'm also a manager, an acquisitions editor, and I work on our Twitter presence. So AlzAuthors is an effort of our true hearts, for sure.
Thank you, Jean. Always good to see you. Well, Vicki, she kind of set us up here, so we'll go to you next. Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you, Lance. It's good to be here. I'm Vicki Tapia, and I'm from Billings, Montana. And I'm thankful for electronics so that I could connect with all these other people. When I started my journey, there were very few books that I could find anyway, written about what I was going through. And it's refreshing after 10 years to see where things have blossomed and gone to. As Lance mentioned, I'm one of the founders of AlzAuthors. I am also the treasurer, and I am the acquisitions editor for children's books. And glad to be here.
Thank you, Vicki. Next, we'll go to Susan Landis. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, thank you. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
I'm Susan Landis, and I am the author of my memoir, In Search of Rainbows. My mother had Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease, and I wrote a memoir about our difficult but yet bittersweet journey. I am manager and also board member of AlzAuthors, and I have been with AlzAuthors for about 5 years now, so about halfway through. So I also do graphic design. I am the curator of the custom caregiver collections, and I'm also a manager of LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Susan. Next, we'll go to Christy Byrne-Yates. Welcome, Christy.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you, Lance, for having us. I am a AlzAuthor manager and also on the board, and I am Marianne's co-host for Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. I wrote the book that I needed, and it's called Building a Legacy of Love, thriving in the sandwich generation. I, like everybody else said, I'm a reader. I'm an educator as well, and I just was looking for stuff that would help me when I was going through a time period where I was caring for both my parents, both of whom had dementia, while raising two kids and working full time. And I found a lot of information, but not what I needed, which was more about the sandwich generation. So Marianne found me in 2021 and told me about AlzAuthors and asked me to join, and I did, and I just got involved right away. And I think it's been one of the best choices I've ever made. So I'm really proud of this organization and proud of being a part of it. So it's great.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here. Oh, Vicki, you had a question?
Could I say the name of my book? I forgot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm the author of the book, Somebody Stole My Iron, which I wrote with the idea of helping other people maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into. And as the same as Jean, both my parents had dementia, and Christy, both my parents had dementia at the same time. So it was often a rocky, bumpy road.
Sure. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Dorothy Horn. Welcome, Dorothy.
Oh, I am so honored to be here. I'm just in awe, and thank you for all these AlzAuthors. Y'all have just helped me. You don't know how much. My husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when he was 62, and he died about 8 years ago after a 7-year journey. And it was hard, but I tell you what, having these ladies here, I wasn't alone anymore. They were my group. They were there for me, and it made everything so much better.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, ladies.
Did you have a book you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I do have. I have 2 books. Glimpses of Grace. This is volume 1. It subtitled Walking in Hope Through Alzheimer's in Ordinary Days. And this was published in 2015. It's a series of essays, not all about Alzheimer's, but most of them are. I just started writing essays about our journey through it. And what I looked for specifically was God's grace through it also. So it has a lot of that. These were articles before they were ever in a book. They were just in our local newspaper, and people started telling me in 2015, you really need to publish these. You really need to publish these. So I ended up self-publishing this one, and I continued writing, and this is the second book that came out this summer. That's just the continuation of our journey and God's grace through it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dorothy. Next, we'll go to Deb Bunt. Welcome, Deb.
Hi, thank you, Lance. Okay, I'm Deb Bunt. I live in the UK on the East Coast in Suffolk, and I've written my book. Now, I'm not very good at this camera. Oh yeah, there you go. Slow Puncture, Living Well with Dementia. This is about my best friend, Peter Berry, who was diagnosed at the age of 50 with a young onset, and it was just a look at a year in his life, and how his attitude informed my attitude. And we still do loads of things together, and we do lots of talks, and we do lots of cycling. In fact, forgive me if I'm slightly droopy now. I've just come back from a 40-mile ride, and I realise I'm quite hungry too. But AlzAuthors catapulted my self-esteem into a place where I'm quite glad it is, because I didn't think I had anything to say. So thank you to the AlzAuthors for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Deb. And Carol?
I'm Carol Bradley Bursack, excuse me, and I wrote Minding Our Elders, Caregivers Share Their Personal Stories. It was very early on, and there was really hardly anything out there. So I interviewed other people who I met in my 15 years of going. I was caring for five elders at that time, and there's 7 total, and 2 young kids. So I too was part of the sandwich generation, though at the time it wasn't a term. One of my kids has ongoing health problems, so it was quite a juggling act. And I interviewed other caregivers because it seemed like nobody was being heard. And that was I called it a portable support group. And of course, since then, I've become a support group moderator and I have a newspaper column that also is question and answer because I felt the support was needed. But also as Marianne knows, I have trouble saying it. I've been reading it for 10 years, but AlzAuthors, my tongue doesn't want to say it. It's so embarrassing, but that happens to me now and then with certain words. But they have been phenomenal, and we'll talk later, I'm sure, but what a effect that they have had. My caregiving has never stopped. I've been a caregiver since I was 12 years old, and I'm still doing it. So all different generations, it just seems to be the way my life, the trajectory of my life.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. You know, Mary, I want to start with you because I've known you the longest. And, you know, I told you when we started our company over 13 years ago, I discovered AlzAuthors in the very beginning, early stages, never realizing we would ultimately have a show and then become connected the way we have, but we've always been supporters of it. I want to start off first with when you look back, you know, on those days when, you know, it just kind of hits you. Did you ever imagine AlzAuthors would be where it is and what it is today, 10 years later?
Not at all. This was a 1-month project. I met up with Jean and Vicky, and there were 2 others that didn't last. And we decided to work together to promote our books, kind of cross promotion. It was on totally selfish endeavor at the time. We just wanted to get our books out there and see if we could maybe sell some books. And what we discovered in that very first month, the 3 of us who did the bulk of the work, is we really liked each other. So we continued that connection after that month ended. So that was in June of 2015. And then we got together in November. We did another similar promotion for Caregiver Appreciation Month. And then when May rolled around again, I contacted them and I said, would you guys like to do this again? But this time, why don't we do something different? Why don't we start a blog? And we'll invite other authors to write about their books. And so that's how we ended up with AlzAuthors. And it was a way to help bring in one place this collection of literature written from personal experience. That's what makes it so special. The majority of the books are written from people who have been on a dementia journey and have decided to share what they've learned and their experiences. And we didn't know at first, would we even find enough authors to fill a month's worth of blog posts? Because it was for 1 month. And at the end of the month, we still had some in the queue. So we said, well, let's just keep it going until we run out of authors. And we're still going.
Yeah.
And then during that time, and as Carol said, and Vicky, I think, mentioned, is there was a dearth of resources of this type available to caregivers. When I wrote my book, I started it in 2002, and I was trying to do some background research. There were very, very few books that weren't written by like a doctor or a psychiatrist or something that really told you what's going on in a family care situation with dementia. And as we started 10 years ago, we were finding more and more. A lot of them were pretty obscure. And now there are so many, and they come to us. Whereas before we had to go hunting first for books, and now we don't hunt for books. They come to us. And we accept about, I think it's around 60% of the books that come our way make it onto the AlzAuthors platform.
Do you guys have any special plans or celebrations for the 10th anniversary?
Oh, yeah, we're doing a lot of fun stuff, and one of which is a giveaway. So we do the custom caregiver collections, which people can purchase, and it's a collection of books that will help you choose what's best for you, in your situation or your organization. But we are going to give away mini caregiver collections. So that's 3 books, and there's one every month, and the winner gets to choose which topic they want. So if they're looking for caring for mother books, we'll give them 3 caring for mother books. So people can go on our website, alzauthors.com, and they can enter that raffle to get the books. So that is something new and exciting. We're going to do a film festival later this year. We have several authors or creatives in our organization that have done film work. So we want to showcase what they've been doing. And that's like another thing where there weren't a lot of movies and things about dementia, probably up until maybe like The Notebook, and then there was still Alice, and now there's more and more and more, but a lot of people are actually telling stories from reality, personal. So it's not like some Hollywood script that somebody put together. So we want to highlight some of those. So we're doing that. And we've got some special podcasting events that are coming up, our virtual events. We're continuing with our monthly book club with Aging and Amazing. So that's going on. We've got some merchandise that we'll be selling throughout the year to commemorate the 10th anniversary. So people can purchase an item if they want. That helps support us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're always looking for donations so we can keep this going. And I don't know, maybe somebody else, if I left something out, somebody else can add to it.
Well, and I know you recently, one of the newer developments or changes or additions was it last year you guys added the store on the website?
Oh, it's been there for a couple of years.
A couple of years?
2 or 3 years now. Yeah, that's not really that new. And that's separate from the commemorative items that we'll be offering through. So we're a different company. So yeah, so that, and we're helping to participate in a conference, the Exposed Dementia Conference, which is coming up on March 28th. I just learned today that one of our authors is going to be there, and she's going to be representing AlzAuthors. So that was pretty exciting. And we're just always looking for opportunities to network and to present our authors' work to, people who need it, because caregivers, one of the things we hear a lot from people is, I wish I knew about you when my mother was alive, or my father was alive, or my husband, because I think caregivers are so busy and they don't have time to look for books or look for information. And I mean, we're right here and we can help you find what you want pretty quickly. And you can be assured that the books are all vetted, and we're all not only authors, but we're also former caregivers or caregivers currently. So we understand what people are going through, and we know what they're looking for.
Absolutely. Well, before I move on, Marianne, I started by saying, do you imagine 10 years ago what it would be today? What do you imagine 10 years from now for the 20th anniversary?
Oh boy. Well, my hope would be that we would have, hundreds of thousands of followers, and not just
And I'm sure you will.
thousands. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Marianne, especially
you.
for everything and just the absolute, commitment you've given to helping not only share the stories of all these authors, but also to support all the family caregivers taking care of their loved ones with dementia. We're definitely much better with you in the community than without you. So next I want to go to Vicki. Vicki, I want to talk to you because you're one of the co-founders also. How did you come up with this idea with Marianne and Jean? Did you have a similar story or did you have different ideas?
Very similar story. I mean, Jean's in Ohio, Marianne's in New York State, and I'm in Montana, for heaven's sakes. How would 3 people that far apart get together? And I think just Marianne is what would you call it? The kingpin, the queen pin. The ideas flow out of her like we call her popcorn. Ideas are coming out all the time. And I think she directs us, and kind of like we put our nose to the ground and we go, it's really kind of amazing. I don't know how we decided to do this other than what Marianne's already said. We started out promoting each other, and the long held story was I wasn't very excited to do that because I figured, why would I promote my competition? But then it was pointed out to me that if a person reads one book about dementia, they'll probably read 2 or 3 or 4. And I thought, I might have something here. So we decided, as Marianne already said, to promote our books together. And one thing led to another. And it just, I don't even know how this all happened, but here we are. And I'm so glad.
No, that's wonderful. How did you decide, how do you decide which books to feature? Like Marianne said, you accept about 60% of the entrants or the submissions. That means 40% are not making the cut, so to speak. How do you go through, what is your thought process and your vetting process like, if you're able to share that?
Sure. No, we have an extensive list of things that to qualify. You read the list and go, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then you fill out our form. But it's mandatory that we read the book. We need to see the author's book and read it because we're looking for the personal story. We're looking for the pathway, how these people travel down their pathway of dementia, and what lessons did they learn that they can teach us and others looking for help. It's hard sometimes to figure out what we're doing with some of the books. It's like we like the book, but it could use some editing. So sometimes we go back to the author and say, if you get to have someone edit this for you or whatever the issue is, then come back to us. We are interested in your book. And some books we read and go, oh my gosh, this is the book I wish I could have read when I was going through it. And that's an easy choice for us. But every situation is different. So every book has to be read and meet our criteria.
When you look back, Vicki, from 10 years ago to present day, what's some of the things that has surprised you on this journey? Like, I asked Marianne if she ever thought it would become what it is today. Did you ever think or have that vision?
Oh no. I figured we'd promote our books together a few times and stay in contact with each other, but I had no idea where I was headed. And I like to say, AlzAuthors was the greatest gift my parents ever gave me, because through these people, I started to heal. I didn't feel like I was alone in the world, the only person that had ever gone through this. Well, I knew I hadn't, but it felt like that was what it was sometimes. But if I hadn't had this group, I may not be where I am today. We're supportive of each other. I mean, we just have grown to love each other. Wow, what a gift. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Truly.
Like you mentioned, Jean's in Ohio, Marianne's in New York, Deb's in the UK. What is it like working with a team of volunteers and, when they're scattered throughout different time zones and different geographical locations?
It hasn't been hard, really. We just have to watch the time change. I know, Deb, it's kind of later in the evening for you or the afternoon. I don't think it's been hard. We have something called Slack that we can talk to each other back and forth, the board members and our associates, so we can stay in touch that way. It's been 5 years since we met Susan and she joined us, but we've never met her in person. I mean, wow, that would be one of my dreams would be to have us all together again. It's been a few years. Yeah, I think I forgot your question.
No, you answered it. You answered it. No, I appreciate it, Vicki. I want to go to our friend Jean. Jean, how are you today?
Great.
It's good to see you. Only people from Michigan and Ohio will understand what I'm about to say, but Jean's about the only good thing in Ohio, everyone, right?
Oh, watch it.
I'm kidding, partly. Jean, we've talked numerous times, throughout the last several years, but, one of the things is you have such a sunshining, radiant, positive outlook. Was it like that when you were caring for your parents? I mean, I'm assuming you probably had some difficult times where it was hard to be as positive.
Yes, it was very difficult. Both of them on the same trajectory, diagnosed on the same day, and they had always been so peaceful with one another and just peaceful people overall. So it was a hand-in-hand decline that they did not recognize in one another. My Dad never tattled that Mom couldn't put the wash from the washing machine to the dryer. Mom never said, hey, your dad is gliding through stop signs. So in that way, it was good for them to remain connected and in love with one another. My sister and I suffered the wrath of that, even though we had always had a peaceful upbringing and never really disagreed with our parents. I was the hometown daughter and my sister in Florida. But because they had always been such positive attitude people and people of great faith, that's just what was intrinsic in me through the very difficult times. It all came back to these are wonderful people who gave me a wonderful upbringing, and I have to do my best for them. I have to remain positive. And this is kind of an intimate story of my childhood, but I was very ill when I was 2.5 years old with spinal meningitis, and it was thought I would not survive. And because I did, my parents raised me every day with the attitude of, you might not have been scheduled to live this long without the faith of your community. And since you are alive, every day when your feet hit the floor, you better do good work.
Wow.
And that just kept echoing to me. I had to do good work for them in my life, for my family, for my students I was teaching. It just always had to be from the heart, the best it could be, and positive. So I think I was just very lucky, Lance, in that I was raised by positive attitude people, and that permeated everything for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think people that you encounter are lucky that you were raised with that, because it just brightens your day. I always smile when we talk, Jean. But let's talk about, your book, Alzheimer's Daughter. We've loaned it out to families we've helped several times because you guys were gracious enough to donate a custom caregiver book collection to us. And, people really resonate with that story. And had it not been for you discovering, I think you shared with me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you discovered Marianne rather than Marianne discovering you. And I believe you sent her your book because you wanted her feedback.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine you would then become a co-founder of AlzAuthors with her and, Vicky?
But just to back up on that a little bit, as I was in the dark days of cleaning out my parents' home while they were still alive, but I'd had to move them into care, I found their World War II love letters, which I had never seen, in a box in the bottom corner of a closet. And those letters spurred me on. They became the chapter beginnings for each chapter, which shows their young love and dedication to one another in contrast to their decline from Alzheimer's and dementia. But in having written this book, we were a very private family, and I was really writing this for my own family. I never expected, in fact, when I pushed the final publish button 4 years after having worked on the book, I honestly thought I would be struck by lightning, that my parents would be so displeased that I had revealed such a personal and intimate story about them. And so I was very insecure about having written it. And I had read Blue Hydrangeas, loved Blue Hydrangeas. And I needed validation myself. And so I packaged up my book in an envelope and sent it to Marianne Sciucco, thinking she is going to look at this thing and throw it in the trash. And lo and behold, she emailed me and said, Jean, this is lovely. People need these titles. Will you help me elevate other works like this? And who else have you read along your journey? And I had read Vicky's book. So that's really how the nuts and bolts of how we started. And as Vicki says, Marianne is our popcorn. I mean, Vicki and I would still be doing the very same things we did at the very beginning, which is reaching out, asking people, will you send us your book so we can read it and feature it? And instead, because of Marianne's vision and what we have built because of her, people are now sending us more books than we can handle of their personal journeys. So no, I never would have expected this.
Wonderful. What has been one of the most personal rewarding experiences in the 10 years of AlzAuthors for you?
I would echo what Vicki said, that coming from the insecurity of, oh my gosh, I wrote something so personal and feeling so guilty about that, the responses from readers and the responses from the authors that we gather, we all are share some part of this path, even though everyone's story is different, everyone's personal journey is different. We all wrote our books with the intention of helping others. And in turn, that has healed us. We have healed one another, and we heal others who read the books.
That's wonderful. Last question, Jean. You're part of the, decision-making group with Vicki on whether books get approved or not. Is it hard for you to reject people because you're just so nice?
So very hard, because I know they put their heart and soul into it. However, there are people who send us a book, they misunderstand who we are. They misunderstand our mission. And so they see the title AlzAuthors and they think, oh, this is about Alzheimer's. I can send them about the books, or I can send them a book about the drugs that are out there available, or the stages of Alzheimer's, or the different kinds of Alzheimer's and dementia, different categories. And those are easy to say. It's not that that book isn't well written, but it doesn't fit into what we do. We are about the personal stories of Alzheimer's. So those are easy just to say. It doesn't quite fit in our wheelhouse, but otherwise it is very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I will say, if I ever was to get a rejection letter, I would want it from you, Jean, because I think I would feel good about being rejected.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Susan, let's go to you next. You've been around for, you said, I think about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah. How did you first discover AlzAuthors?
Well, my book is about, it's basically a book about healing. It's a healing journey that I took with my mother. I connected with Vicki. Vicki and I kind of went in the same groups, I think, and we had a lot in common. And sometimes when we commented on certain things, and I think it was a support group that we were both in together, we kind of had almost the same story. Her brother was, I should say, my brother was kind of the same as hers, didn't much want to get involved with the caregiving. So it kind of fell on our shoulders. So like her, we had that commonality. And when my book came out, I think I was just in the process of writing my book at the time. But when I finished it, I did send it into AlzAuthors, and she gave me the thumbs up, the green light. She said she loved it. And so that, and like Jean, it was such a personal story. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of healing. There was a lot of really personal life lessons about this, because my mother and I had been estranged for many years. And she was throughout my life, she had abandoned me. She had rejected me. And I left home at the age of 16. When I was 19, I got married, and I moved several states away just to put distance between us. And years later, when she developed dementia, my dad started having his own health issues. So doing it myself, the whole thing fell on my shoulders. And I really, every day I struggled with the past, with the emotions that I carried around with me. And AlzAuthors there were so many stories. There were so many, I kept looking for other people like me, people that were hurting, people that needed to be validated, people that had family dynamics. Family dynamics is something that people don't often talk about. And that's kind of something that we fall into the caregiver role, but we don't really address the dynamics involved.
Right.
So AlzAuthors had just so much of that. And I felt so validated. And that's why I wrote my story, was to help others feel validated too. If they were struggling with those dynamics, I wanted to offer comfort and to offer hope.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want others to know about Lewy body dementia and caregiving? Because, we facilitate multiple caregiver support groups here in Michigan, and we'll get questions like, oh, is this just for Alzheimer's, or is this just for this illness? And we say, no, it's just for caregivers. But then you get into the more, subcategories of why you're a caregiver. But caregiving has a lot of commonalities regardless of if you're in the sandwich generation or if you're caring for a spouse or a husband or a child. What do you want them to know about Lewy body dementia and caregiving specifically?
Lewy body dementia is different. A lot of people, when my mother was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, I had never heard of it. It's complicated and it can mimic other diseases as well, especially mental health issues. My mother had suffered from depression, and she was just a very negative person throughout most of her life. As she got a little older, her moods almost became erratic. They were mood swings. They were just different behavior that would go back and forth. And so I question, how long did she actually have Lewy body dementia that we mistook for other symptoms? Now that I look back, I really do think that Lewy body dementia was probably something that she had in her 40s. She was in her late 60s when she was actually diagnosed. But Lewy body dementia can be a very tricky thing, and it can also be more intense for a lot of people. I would say if you are a caregiver or a family member or have a loved one that has Lewy body dementia, learn as much as you can about it. Everybody has something to share if they have been through it. Empower yourself with knowledge, with wisdom, with other people's stories. Learn about it as much as you can. And I know even from my mother's been gone about 13 years now. And even now there's still more stuff coming out about it. And I'm still, every time I see an article, I'll read it because I still want to know. I'm still learning about it. And, being a caregiver to somebody like that or for any dementia, it's difficult. It's really difficult.
Absolutely. I know, just before we move on, with Lewy body, we just actually interviewed the director of the Lewy Body Dementia Association, and it's fascinating to hear about all the possibilities that are on the horizon from people with that diagnosis. And like you said, it's ever changing, and it probably will only continue to change as science and healthcare continues developing and learning new things. So thank you so much, Susan. Really appreciate you sharing your story and being here. Next, we'll go to Christy Byrne-Yates. Welcome back, Christy. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Any trees being chopped down today?
No, I was thinking about that this morning. I was thinking, it's Tuesday. Is that the day that they come and blow the leaves next door?
But no,
I'm good.
just to clue everyone in, when Christy and I, we did a one-on-one interview last year, and we logged on, and first time we had met, and all you hear is chainsaws in the background. It was fun. Yeah. So we always kid about that.
Somebody had decided to chop down a tree. I will say this, I don't know if you remember, but I was born in Ohio, so I'm just keeping track of the
you probably
the Ohio jokes.
Probably. Well, next we're going to go to Carol Bradley Bursack. Welcome, Carol. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
You should have left the Ohio out of there, Christy. You were doing good.
I know.
So Christy, you're doing such tremendous work for something that relates to my generation, and that's sandwich caregiving. And you wrote your book, as you shared earlier. What was it that brought you into AlzAuthors? How did you discover them? And, what do you feel about the work they're doing?
So they discovered me. I got a call from Marianne, and I had only recently published my book, self-published, and she found me, and I was just so excited, and I wanted to know more about it, and so I said, I'll jump in. This is fantastic. Let's do this. And as I started to learn more about what they do, I thought this is really kind of cool. And I was looking for my next thing. I had written my book, published it, and then I retired from 20 years as a school psychologist. So there was definitely an opportunity for me to find some other things. And I remember I attended might have been the first poetry festival. Anyway, it was fantastic, and I was just hooked. And so when there was a call out to AlzAuthors for volunteers, I said, I have helium hands. Everybody can tell you, if somebody says, hey, we need somebody to do something, my hand just goes right up in the air. And so I started to find my way and do different things. And then when Marianne asked me to join as a co-host for the podcast, I thought, well, this is great, because I certainly do love to talk to people. So this will be fantastic. And it's been such a great opportunity for me personally to grow as a person, but also I have learned so much more. Like as Susan said, learned so much more about Alzheimer's, about the different types of dementia, about all of the different things that how this impacts all of us. Who talked about the dynamics in a family? That might have been Susan too. It's just that all of that is so important, and we don't talk enough about it. So I am all about, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. What, you're the co-host with Marianne on the Untangled podcast for AlzAuthors. What is some of the things that have surprised you since you become more involved, and, you got a couple of years under your belt now that you may not have expected when you first stepped into the role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I've learned a whole lot about technology, but not enough, because it still boggles me. But I have also found all of the different kind of wrinkles to this, right? That all the different layers that come from talking to different people. Every time we have a podcast, I am so encouraged by the kinds of things people do for other people and how they are sharing these stories. But also I learn, wow, this is amazing. And we hear so many crazy things these days. Like there's a lot of uncomfortability, right? We have a lot of turmoil going on around the world. And then you hear people talk about caring for someone. And it could be somebody who, and what I really appreciate is it's not just, oh, everybody's a loved one. It's also, this was a difficult relationship. And I did this, and here's what came out of doing that. And I just love, I keep finding all the different, so I really do feel like it helps me to become a much more positive person, right? Like I don't sink down into that hole of everybody's horrible. It lifts my spirits to know that there are people out here doing incredible things and willing to share about them. Absolutely. So that's what I think is fantastic for me.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And, when you look at everybody here today and the countless hundreds of other authors, people are taking those experiences and trying to turn them into something positive, right? Where most people, you don't have to. For most of us, there's nothing in it for us other than truly just wanting to help others who are going through a similar circumstance. So, I appreciate that, Christy, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Next, I'm going to go to Dorothy. Dorothy, welcome.
Thank you. I feel so honored to be here.
Yeah. And one last Ohio joke for everybody. Christy said she was born in Ohio, but she moved out of there. Did you notice that? No more, I promise. Dorothy, I want to talk, you're one of the authors at AlzAuthors. And when I was talking to Marianne about doing this celebration for the 10-year anniversary, I told her it'd be really nice to have, some of the founders, some of the management, but then also to have some of the authors as well, just to kind of talk about how, this has helped them and, what their thoughts are on AlzAuthors. What are some of the ways that AlzAuthors has helped you personally?
Oh gosh, so many ways. The main thing from feeling alone in my journey to having a community to learn from, to be to just be a part of. It's made all the difference. I found myself no longer alone. I found myself learning things. I found myself just being more upbeat, because it is a lonely journey, as you all know. So that's like the best thing. They're wonderful people. I've developed some relationships with them. They reach out, and I don't see how they do all they do, but they've just really helped me over these past few years. Like I said, my husband's been gone. I guess I'm not even sure. You see, I'm not even sure when I first found out about them. Does anybody remember? Marianne, do you remember?
No, it's been a few years though.
Yeah. But anyway, they've just they've helped me in so many ways.
That's wonderful. Do you want to mention the name of your books again really quick, Dorothy?
Okay. It's they're Glimpses of Grace, Volume 1 and 2. The first one, the subtitle is Walking in Hope Through Alzheimer's in Ordinary Days. And my second book, like I said, that just came out this last summer, is Glimpses of Grace, and Grace Will Lead Us Home. It's Volume 2. It's just the rest of the story and beyond, the rest of our story and beyond.
Wonderful. Great titles, too. Well, Dorothy, we appreciate you being here and, for what you're doing to help, because it's more than just a name, AlzAuthors. It's the people behind the name and all of the people trying to share and help support the mission and work that AlzAuthors is doing, which consequently will just help support the countless other families, like you were before you discovered them, before a lot of people discovered them, and then they get that benefit and that, that help that is so desperately needed when you're a family caregiver for a loved one. And, it takes a village really to help keep the work going. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I'm just, like I said earlier, thankful to all these women who have helped me so much.
Absolutely. We're going to go to Carol Bradley Bursack next. Welcome, Carol. How are you?
I am fine, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Carol, I was struck. I did not know this about you originally until you did your introduction earlier. You've been around for almost a full 10 years. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I have. I've been in the caregiving field for a long, long time. Yeah. And because I started with a neighbor before I ever had family members that needed help. I had an older neighbor, and he was 100% deaf, and his wife died, and he was all alone. So what do? You start doing small things, and pretty soon my little kids and we adopted him. So I've been doing this a long time, and but I was early on when they contacted me, and as I said earlier, it felt so good not to be out there alone. I mean, I was just hey, there's other people. I mean, I saw books coming out. Mine eventually was published by a very small publisher, but you're kind of on your own, and most of the books that are well known were at the time by big publishers and put out by big publishers. So anyway, it was such a delight to be part of the group, and they're such wonderful people, and I have stayed in contact with them all along. And then what I've loved is, as a newspaper columnist and a support group facilitator, my whole world is dealing with caregiver issues, and I love to provide resources, but I also love to hear stories. And I am always dropping authors into conversations, and I've used the link a number of times in my column, and just wherever I can, saying, if you want books, if you want people's stories, this is the place to go.
Absolutely.
So it's been just, it's an honor and really a privilege to be among them. And also it is just as a person who's always looking for resources, it's wonderful to have them to promote. So.
Yeah. And resources are what's needed for caregivers, that's for sure. So tell us what it meant to you to have your book become one of the early AlzAuthors picks.
Well, it was an honor. I mean, at the time, I think I'd been contacted by one other author who had an early book, and she interviewed me, and I'd done some other interviews from radio shows and a few other things that had shown up. But this was the first time that I felt there was a group. And this is what I always tell people, is this group was founded by Alzheimer's daughters. These are, I mean, radio hosts are good. Everything is wonderful. People are trying their best, but there's a connection when you've done it yourself. And both of my parents had dementia. My uncle had, I mean, all different kinds of dementia were things we were dealing with early on. And I was so early with it with my dad that the professionals were still using a different approach. They got mad at me for trying to get inside of Dad's thinking and to join him in his world. And they kept telling me I had to reorient him because that was the medical thinking. And so I just let them get mad at me when they were gone. Then I just did what I did. And by that time, Dad was in a nursing home because he'd had surgery, which is where the dementia came from. And the care staff there was wonderful, and they totally got what I was doing. So they joined me in all of it, making him his medical degree that he thought he'd earned because that was interrupted by World War II. But all of these things, you do on your own because you are alone as a family caregiver, and then you find out something like this, and that you're with these other caregivers. It's just it's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you've been around for the 10 years, tell us how your connection to the AlzAuthors has endured through these years as part of your ongoing work.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's very much of it is being able to use it now as a professional promoting another professional organization. And we started out as just, family caregivers trying to find each other. And still the mission for them and the mission for me is we know how badly caregivers need support. One of my clients is a geriatrician, and I moderate and facilitate her caregiving group. And caregiving changes, and there is more support than there was years ago. And yet, as I think everyone will agree, it's all the same. Where, as has been mentioned, everyone's type of dementia is different. Every journey is slightly different. And yet we're all kind of living the same story. And I see these same questions come up over and over in my column, which is gone for years and years and years in the newspaper, because I was their librarian at the time. And I talked them into there again. They said, I don't know if anybody's interested in that topic, because I said, we need a caregiving column. And then finally they said, well, all right, we'll give it a try. And it's been going on for 2 decades now. And it's quite a popular column. But those questions I can get year after year after year, and I can give them a slightly different answer. And yet it's the same caregiver heart that is just saying, help me. I don't know what to do with this. And I can give them the resources they need best that I can, especially since some states are better. We all know that the problem with some states, some areas have better care than others. But at least as I tell most people, my main thing, whether it's a column, the support groups, I'm the chief hand holder. I mean, they need somebody who gets it.
Right.
And has struggled. And I had so many people that I've lived a portion of almost everyone's story. And so this is how I use it. But I love to be able to name drop. Anytime I can promote AlzAuthors, I will do it.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, for all the work that you're doing and just the commitment and dedication, especially for the last 10 years, helping to support AlzAuthors. Deb, we're going to go to you next.
Hi.
All right. So, you have your book, Slow Puncture. I want to talk, though, how did you discover AlzAuthors? Because you're in the UK. Were you approached by them or did you approach them?
I think it might have been a little of both. After the book was published, I was on Twitter and saw AlzAuthors there. And I can't remember whether I reached out or whether Vicky possibly reached out. I was trying to think about this. But somebody reached out to somebody else and they took the book as part of their resources. And it's, like everyone else has said, it's a huge honour. And I feel it has sort of pushed us further along being known in the UK. Equally, when Peter and I do our talks, we always talk about AlzAuthors and say fantastic resources, and we have their logo on our banner. So we do our bit in the UK, I think. I would add, obviously, my story is a little different. I'm not a carer. I'm Peter's friend. So I haven't experienced what everybody else has experienced. I'm not a caregiver in the traditional sense. So it's a slightly different perspective, I think, from everybody else. And the focus with Peter at the moment is very much about living well rather than me caring for him.
Yeah. How, I know you mentioned you put it on the banner and you always suggest it, but what about for you and Peter personally? What would you say has been the biggest difference that it's made in the two of you in your journey?
I think it's probably safe to say Peter doesn't know that our book is on the list with AlzAuthors or even who they are. But that doesn't mean it hasn't helped him, because it means his voice has gone out to more people than it might have done otherwise. So at some level, it's helped him to be heard. For me, I think everyone has used the word sort of validation. I'm kind of overcome with self-doubt and that whole imposter syndrome. And the fact, it's all right, your husband reading a book and saying, oh, it's very good. But the fact that somebody else has read it and said, yeah, we want to use that, has really lifted me to a different level. And I like to think I give something back to them as well in sharing their website and their information. But it's a huge accolade for me personally.
Wonderful. How is, before I go on, how is Peter doing?
He is doing remarkably well. His short-term memory has declined. It's pretty scary. But he's very articulate, very verbal, very funny still, public talking. And we were in Gibraltar for their literary festival and talking about our book and talking about his journey. And obviously he remembers nothing about it. But in that moment when we're doing it, he is happy and content and knows he's doing some good to other people as well as for himself. And also to me. It is that sort of relationship where he helps me.
Wonderful.
Lance, can I add something?
Yeah, Marianne, please.
Yeah, Peter, I personally adore him. I just love him so much. He's a great guy. And he is just one of several authors in our organization who are actually living with dementia themselves. So I consider these books to be really, they're the gold, because we can only imagine what is going on with a person who has one of these conditions. And these people have been able to put it down in words for us to read. So the books, if you go on our website, you'll be able to find the books of Living with Dementia. And Peter they have two actually. And just to learn more and just freely sharing the story. He's been on the podcast. He's been on panels with us. That's something that you really need to spend time listening and learning from, because you will hear direct from their mouths what is going on inside them, because we have no way of knowing.
Absolutely. And I'll also just to
If I can, I've just started our next book, which is 5 years on after slow puncture, because his journey has changed. His how he experiences things have changed, and therefore I've had to change. And I'm trying to put something together as quickly as I can as a sort of follow-up. And I think that would be a different insight into how it is for him.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Deb. And before we go to our last guest here, I'll just also say, for those that want to learn more directly from Peter, Deb and Peter were on the show with us, and we had a wonderful hour-plus long interview with the two of them that was just really insightful and fascinating. You'll get to see Peter riding, is it the penny wheel? How do you say that?
Penny farthing bike.
Yes.
So
yes.
The front wheel is really big and the back wheel is quite little.
Yes. It was a fascinating interview. But Deb, all the best to you. Give our best to Peter. Thank you for being here to help celebrate the 10th anniversary of AlzAuthors. And we'll end with Tanya Ward Goodman. Tanya, how are you?
Hi, I'm so well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just like listening to everyone, and I just, oh my gosh, I feel emotional. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Do you want to, because I know you had to join late, do you want to take a minute and just give a quick 30-second introduction about who you are, where you are, and the name of your book?
Yeah, my name is Tanya Ward Goodman, and my book is called Leaving Tinkertown. It's a story of, I grew up in a roadside attraction in New Mexico built by my father, and he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's when he was 57, and I moved home from Los Angeles to New Mexico to help care for him, and then very quickly my grandmother, his mom, was diagnosed also with Alzheimer's, and so we kind of went through a period of about 5 years with both of them and living in the museum. And now I'm a freelance journalist, and I write a lot about caregiving, and I'm always trying to include the voices of caregivers and voices of people with dementia, because I think it's really important to talk to hear those stories and really understand that it's not just something that comes and changes the person. The person's really the person. My dad was really himself all the way to the end. And so I do feel like it's really important to include and amplify those voices. And so I do a lot of writing, freelance writing and travel writing, but always thinking about caregiving and how different how art is helpful, how poetry is helpful, how really everything that we do is really interrelated. And so that's kind of been my focus. It's been over 20 years since my father died, and I'm really struck by what an enormous shift that was in my life, and how much his Alzheimer's and my response to it and our family's response has kind of shifted the trajectory of my life and changed me in good ways, really good ways.
Oh, it's wonderful. Tanya, share what AlzAuthors has meant to you and how you discovered AlzAuthors.
Well, I think I was one of the very early authors. I mean, at the very beginning, and I was trying to remember just how we met. But for me, it was just a sense of validation. I wrote my book partially as a way to kind of bring back my dad. I needed to write him back to where I remembered him. I needed to kind of understand what we had gone through. It was very difficult for me in the midst of it to know what was happening. And so writing the book gave me a chance to kind of breathe and respond to everything that had happened, and also really see what had happened, not just to me, but to my other family members. I think writing is a great way of kind of creating compassion for other characters that you might not have felt in the moment. But when you're going back to reconstruct a scene and you go, oh, wow, like I have to write my brother and wow, what is happening to him? I'm really seeing him from a different point of view as a character, or seeing my stepmother, or seeing my mom, going through this thing. And so to be sort of looped in with AlzAuthors right away just gave me the sense that I had done something bigger. Like the book had been sort of for me to figure stuff out, and then it became part of this larger community, and it sort of became everyone's story, because I do think that there are these through lines in every caregiver's story. I now that I've been doing it for so long, you meet people who are like, yes, we all were drinking wine out of a coffee cup with our head in a dryer or a cabinet, or somebody is always, there's this kind of repeated, like just, I don't know, there's just these sort of moments of shared, like, this is our reaction to this. And I always find a lot of comfort in that. I had always been collecting books from the time that my dad was diagnosed. I found a lot of comfort. I think the first Alzheimer's memoir I read was The House on Beartown Road, Elizabeth Cohen's book. And I, she's a fellow New Mexican, she had a very, and I was so grateful to find that, because I didn't understand. I was just 30. I mean, I had no experience with what was happening, and any books that I did find were about older people, and the support groups, I would go and I would be with people in their 70s and 80s trying to figure out how to manage their thing. And so I was a really young person, and so I was kind of hunting for company. And I started to amass this collection of books my husband refers to as the Library of Sorrow. And I just started, keeping, and for me, it's a real comfort to have those stories. So when AlzAuthors contacted me, I was like, oh my God, yay. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's such a good resource. And
absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We tell families all the time, you're not alone. But they might feel that way in the moment or in their social circle or their community, but there's thousands, millions out there, but it's just making that connection. And I think that's what AlzAuthors is enabled to have happen, and that is build that community of support. You're caring for a father, Deb's caring for a friend, Jean, both parents, it doesn't necessarily matter who you're caring for. It's the journey that you're going through. And knowing that you're not alone and that there's others that can relate to that experience, I think is invaluable, and at the time and into the future. Because, most that are doing the work like you're doing, that we're doing, the caregiving ended, but yet it's still continuing, but just in a different facet. And I think that's what's so beautiful about AlzAuthors and so many others that are doing that kind of work. We're going to wrap up here, but I just want to take a quick moment, go through the panel. I just want a one-word answer, and I'll call you out by name. Tell me what AlzAuthor means to you or what it stands for. Just give me one word. If somebody said, describe AlzAuthors, and you can only use one word. Marianne, how would you describe it?
Voices.
Voices. Jean?
Healing.
Carol?
Community.
Susan?
Healing.
Deb?
Validation.
Dorothy?
Community.
Christy?
Yeah, community for me too. Community.
Tanya?
Connection.
Connection. And Vicky?
Supportive.
Supportive. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Congratulations to AlzAuthors on their 10th year anniversary from us. And I tell this to Marianne all the time. Any way that we can help support either you or AlzAuthors, we're an email away. So please feel free to reach out, and we'll do whatever we can within our means. But thank you guys so much for taking the time today to celebrate this special occasion. And maybe we'll see you back again in 10 years.
Oh boy. Thank you so much, Lance. And
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Lance.
you for having us.
Our pleasure, guys. Have a great day.
Lance.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com. where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to the team behind AlzAuthors. Happy birthday, AlzAuthors.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.